This episode of The Unstarving Musician is powered by liner notes. Learn from the hundreds of musicians and industry professionals I've spoken with for The Unstarving Musician on topics such as marketing, songwriting, touring, sync licensing, and much more. Sign up for liner notes at unstarvingmusician.com. It's an email newsletter from yours truly in which I share some of the best knowledge gems garnered from the many conversations featured on The Unstarving Musician. You'll also be privy to the latest podcast episodes and liner notes subscriber exclusives. Sign up at unstarvingmusician.com. It's free and you can unsubscribe at any time. This is The Unstarving Musician. I'm Rabonzo. This is my podcast. It features conversations with indie music artists and industry professionals and relevant special topic episodes with yours truly, all intended to help indie music artists better understand the marketing, business, and creative processes that empower us to do more of what we love, make music. That was pretty good. Hey man, The Unstarving Musician needs your support. You can support us in many ways. You can follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can tell a friend about the podcast, or you can visit unstarvingmusician.com/crowd sponsor or the show notes for this episode to learn about the many ways of offering your support. We love you for doing so. My guest for this episode is country singer-songwriter Drew Ryder Smith, who recently rebranded to Drew Ryder Smith. He was Drew Smith, but apparently there are as many Drew Smiths as there are Roberto Reyes Hernandezes. That's why I'm Rabonzo. He just released 3 new singles, which were delayed because of the dilemma of the many other Drew Smiths on the streaming platforms and elsewhere, but they're out and they sound great. I'll place a link for all the places to listen to them in the show notes. And before I get to my conversation with Drew Ryder Smith, I want to mention another podcast that you should check out if you are a gigging musician. It's called the Gigging Musician Podcast. It's hosted by a guy named Jared Judge, who's been on this podcast. We had a wonderful conversation, and I was actually also on his once upon a time. I can put links in the show notes for those. You should check them out. Jared says playing music for live audiences is one of the most rewarding things on the planet, and in his podcast, he dissects everything that goes into being a successful gigging musician. And he does that with guest appearances, and I believe he does some solo episodes too. Anyway, great podcast. You can find all the places to listen at giggingmusicianpodcast.com, but you can also just search for that on your favorite pod player, and you'll find it wherever you get your audio. So the recording quality for this week's episode is great. Drew Ryder Smith clearly has a nice home setup, and his speaking voice is as good as it gets. I read a little bit about that. We don't talk much about it, but he has a great voice. He's been a professional songwriter for about 10 years, but he recently decided to return to the life of touring and releasing his music under his own name. His work has been recorded in many countries, including the U.S., Canada, Ireland, Germany, and Australia, among others, by legends like Merle Haggard, Nashville powerhouse Randy Housen, Rob Snyder, Jason Charles Miller, Kevin Denney, John Schneider, and Australian-Canadian country singer Gord Bamford. That's a great name. I don't know his stuff. Actually, I may have heard some of his stuff. That's an incredible name. I like it. Before becoming a full-time songwriter for a publishing house, he had it going on as a touring musician. He'd opened for Don Williams, Big and Rich, Lee Brice, and Lady A, among others, and Merle Haggard at the Ryman Auditorium in front of industry executives John Prine, Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, and Keith Urban in the audience. How cool is that? He's the owner of Gray Sound Recording, working as a producer and senior mixing engineer, and the creator of the Before You Record course. Drew released a song called X's back in September of 22, which was one of the 15 most added song for digital radio for multiple weeks following its release. That's a nice song. I listened to it. He just dropped, like I said, 3 new songs, and the titles of those are The Bottom of It, Call Me Back, and Don't Wake Me Up. I just started listening to them today. There was a little delay in getting them out, like I mentioned earlier, because of the whole artist naming convention. We talk about those songs before they were released, plus website platforms. He has used them all. His home base of Nashville, his ties to Fort Worth, Texas, growing up in Tennessee, pneumonia, songwriting vocationally, touring, recording, the origins of my artist named Robonzo, and legendary drummers, and more. We actually spent quite a bit of time on pneumonia and COVID, but I only left some of that in. I felt like we'd digressed quite a bit before we really ever got started in talking about his music and other things that I mentioned here. I think it was somewhat therapeutic for us both, though. Here's me talking to Ryder Smith.
Every one of those hosts, whether it's Squarespace or whatever, and I use Squarespace for like my studio website, and I've used, God, what's the other one? The other really popular
Wix.
Wix, yeah, I used that years ago as well, and actually did a trial on it again probably a few years ago. So relatively recently. They all have their things. They've got their upsides and their downsides, but I would say for an artist, Bandzoogle is probably it's the best one out there. There's a few little editing things, that I wish were a little more, not even user friendly. Everything is pretty much user friendly. It's just I wish there were a few more options. But again, you swap over to Squarespace, and it's limited. Its abilities are limited, and same with Wix and all of them. But I really think any artist now would be doing themselves a favor by using Bandzoogle.
I'm gonna share your feedback with her. She'll be excited. Maybe they'll give you a call to ask you about your your editing interests.
Yeah.
Wow.
Roberto, where are you at, man?
I'm actually, my wife and I moved to Querétaro, Mexico, which is not too far from Mexico City, about a 3-hour drive. We moved here in April of last year. And prior, we were in Panama for almost 6 years, living the beach life, and then California and Texas before that.
Wow. Where at in California?
San Jose.
San Jose? That's a great area.
Yeah, we liked it. It's just so stupid expensive to live there now.
Man, it's getting crazy everywhere, isn't it?
I know. Are you in Nashville?
Yeah, I'm in Nashville.
I feel kind of bad because I have, a lovely town, and it's going to stay that way, I'm sure. But I have a canary in the coal mine friend who lived in Austin for a really long time. And I've watched a lot of people moving to Nashville, and some of them from Austin. And he moved to Austin like 2 years ago. I'm like, that's it. That place is going to turn into Austin before too long, where it's like completely, expensive and crowded. I hear the numbers of people moving in, weekly, and it's crazy.
Dude, it's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. And I just keep thinking, where are we going to put everybody?
Well, the town I'm in is the same way, and I worry mostly about water, but it's growing like a weed, partly from Mexican nationals moving from the city after, basically after the pandemic. They're like, okay, had enough of that. And then it's also becoming an increasingly popular expat destination. So I don't know.
Were you, so where did you grow up?
Fort Worth, Texas.
Fort Worth, yeah. I was going to say you very clearly didn't grow up in Mexico. Fort Worth is another great place, man. I've got some family out there, and then we'll be in the Dallas-Fort Worth area for the ACMs this year. So I guess that's in, I don't remember the date, March or April. The ACM Awards will be there. And then the CMA Awards are going to be in Austin. Everything's moving to Texas, man. It's wild.
When are the CMAs?
CMAs will be we just had them here in Nashville in November. It's usually around like within the first 7 to 10 days of November every year. And it's always in Nashville. And so this year, It's crazy, man. The ACMs have been in Vegas for years. And
Oh,
so they announced that they were going to be in Dallas. And then the CMAs announced that that awards show was going to be in Austin. So it's pretty crazy. I don't know what's going on with that, but I thought that Dallas was an interesting venue for the ACM awards. I understand Austin. I get that.
yeah.
Um,
Uh,
but it's interesting that they picked Dallas.
yeah. Fort Worth, I started playing music in that area, and I'm still like blown away at the musicianship there, having, moved around a bit. And even in having come from San Jose, a lot of musicians there, but I always like, wow, Fort Worth really has it going on. If it just like maybe on the cusp of one day being at what Austin might have been in the early days. But I suppose that, you know, Dallas is not as iconic for music, far from it, but just sort of iconic for appreciation of country music and the things that
Uh,
are sort of emblemized in it.
that's true, man. That's a good point. That's a
Maybe
good point.
could have just been economics, though. Who knows?
Could have been, man. You never know with these guys.
Yeah. So, did you grew up in? I was reading Southern Middle Tennessee. Is that right?
Yeah, yeah.
What?
Just about an hour and a half south of Nashville.
Oh, okay, that's cool. What was that like?
Um, Man, it was great because we were close enough to Nashville. My family would come to Nashville usually about once a month. We'd take a trip up to Nashville just a day trip. Me and my mom and my dad, and that was kind of our time to connect as a family. So I got to be in and around Nashville a lot, but still far enough out of the city that it was, tiny little town. There's an Amish community in my town.
Wow.
Yeah, which is random. I think, like the next closest ones are like Ohio and Pennsylvania. So it's weird that they just picked a random town in Tennessee, but I love it here. And I was very blessed to grow up an hour and a half south of Nashville because I've got buddies that are here from Southwest Texas.
Mm,
And if anything happens, God forbid, but if anything happens, family emergencies and stuff, they're a 15-hour drive from home. I mean, even if you can find a flight, you're 8 hours from home, at least, by the time you get to the airport and jump on a plane and get there and get a car to wherever you need to go. And so for me, I'm really blessed that if anything happens, I can get home quickly.
that's nice.
That's yeah, and I really, man, I think that has always probably helped my focus. That's been one of those things that I haven't had to worry about, that other friends of mine and peers in the community and in the industry, I'm sure that's something that weighs on their mind.
Oh yeah, and especially after the last 3 years or so has kind of taught us the value of that proximity to whatever's important, whoever's important to us.
Man, it really does, and it does raise your awareness to that.
Yeah, for sure. I wasn't going to ask you about this, but since we're talking about it, I had read that you had in the somewhat recent past had pneumonia, and it caught my eye because in 2015 I got it, and just being stupid, I made it, let it get worse. And so when COVID came around, I was like, nope, don't want anything to do with an upper respiratory, something that we don't know that much about. Have you? I don't know how bad your pneumonia was, but did you sort of have that in the back of your mind? Well, shoot, you got it during COVID, didn't you? Pneumonia.
Yeah, this was just I got it like a month ago,
Oh wow.
almost a month ago to the day. I initially kind of wondered if it was COVID,
Sure.
but I had the flu and pneumonia at the same time.
Yeah, for God's sakes.
Yeah, yeah. The flu was one thing, man, but the pneumonia, that one really put me down. I'm still not 100%.
I hate being sick, and I guess most people might say that if they were asked, about it. But I
Dude,
just
I'm
can't
such a
get
baby.
it.
Typically, man, I'm such a wuss. I just hate being sick in any capacity. It doesn't matter if it's just a sinus infection or, I'll bitch about a stomach ache. You so
That's funny. Well, I always have this saying that comes in my head when I am under the weather in any way, is that it's something that reminds us we're alive. So, and I try to go with that, and I hope I get well.
that's you know what? That's true, man. I should probably pick that up and carry it with me. I need to remember that.
Right?
It's a great saying.
It makes you appreciate when you turn the corner and get better. All right, let's talk about some music before you run out of time with me. But I listened to X's and The Truth this morning. They sound great. So
Thank you, man.
X's is a more recent release, and The Truth from year before last. Wow, that went fast, right?
It did, yeah.
And I see that you've written a lot of stuff, and it looks like much of it has been for other artists, or at least on the surface it looks that way. I don't know if it feels that way to you, but just from perusing Spotify, I see these two tunes and another one. I guess I just want to ask what's up with that, or do you write the majority of your stuff for other artists, or is there just a ton of stuff you haven't published that you may do later?
Oh God, there's so much. I mean, I've written well over 1,000 songs now.
Oh man,
I've been writing songs for a living for 12 years. That's been my job, and so I've been very blessed, very fortunate that other people have recorded my stuff. If that's your job, then that's the hope. Somebody else is singing it. But man, I just and I was doing the artist thing years ago, and I started having some success as a songwriter, and I thought, well, that's what's working right now. So I'm gonna really put my focus into that. And so I pretty much stopped touring, and people. I don't think people understand the schedule of touring, and because I've had so many people say, well, man, don't you write on the road? And it's like, no, I don't write on the road. I would love to be able to write on the road, but it really is exhausting, and that's not a complaint. It's just that by the time you travel and you load in and you sound check and you shower and you go back and you do the gig and then you load out, and now it's midnight. And now you've got to drive 6 hours to another town. And, by the time all of that stuff is happening, you really don't have any energy left to write, but you certainly don't have any creative energy. That being said, I thought, well, as a songwriter, that's what's working right now. So I'm going to focus on that. So, I stopped traveling. I stopped going out on the road and doing openers, and that was great. But I eventually, a few years ago, I got to the point where I was like, man, you know what? I've written so many songs. I still have so much to say. And now I think I'm at a point where I would like to sing some of these songs myself. And so that's what I've done, is I've put my focus back into being an artist. Still very focused on writing songs for other people. But I think I'm older now, and I'm more experienced now, and I am able to balance that better.
And just a perspective for listeners, I was reading in your bio or your press kit, one sheet, one of those things, that you've done opening gigs for Don Williams, Big and Rich, Lee Brice, Lady A, Merle Haggard at the Ryman, and with a lot of noteworthy people and industry executives watching you. I know that a lot of people who live in your town or elsewhere think that's the dream, and probably maybe it was, but I can see, having written songs for so long and having had the success you've had with others recording them, and then maybe doing a full circle thing to being an artist and recording, I can see it all makes sense. Do you think that, it doesn't sound like it, but do you think that you'll ever return to touring to any extent that you had done before?
That's the hope, man. And Part of my logic on it now, Rabanzo, is that I have so many songs cataloged now through, several different publishing companies that I've been with over the years. All of that is, I'm still getting cuts, still getting good cuts, which is great. But enough of that stuff is out there that I think I am able to go out and tour without that pressure of a publisher going, "Hey, man, you've been gone a lot this month, and you've only turned in 4 songs," and feeling like I have to correct that because now there's so much in the can, that can be pitched. I don't think that's what I have to worry about. So yeah, my hope is to get back to touring that way. I'm older now, so it's definitely it's definitely easier when you're a young man. I'm still relatively young, but I'm sure it's going to feel different.
May I ask how old you are?
Yeah, I'm 37. Yeah.
I wish I was 37 again.
I've still got a little life left in me, man.
So. Totally. But yeah, I can imagine. When was the last time you were in the grind of touring?
It's been 10 years ago.
Okay, yeah.
It was the last time that I was really touring hard, 4 or 5 nights a week for 6 months at a time.
That'll feel different.
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm definitely going to be able to tell a difference.
Just life changes. You'll just see everything so much differently, I'm sure, as well.
I think so. I think there's so much that so many things that I've matured in that amount of time. I think it's so much more of a business to me now. Back then, it was just it was all fun. I just wanted to get out there, and I didn't care if I made any money or not. And it's different now. I do care about sales and merch sales and ticket sales and things like that. I have to care. I've got a family now, and supporting myself, and those things are important.
I'm sure that the landscape of touring has changed since you were last in it so heavily, and you mentioned things that you care about now that you didn't think much about before. Is there any one or couple of things, maybe you just mentioned them too, but any one or couple of things that you're thinking about business-wise, given the way the business is working right now in the business of touring?
Yeah, you're right. I think the economics have certainly changed. I'm anxious to see what merch sales are going to be like now, because 10 years ago they were excellent. It was really great, and you'd sell a ton of CDs after a show. And there's people that are out there that are still selling a ton of CDs, and it's because people really love to have something that they can hold in their hand.
Yeah,
and you can't really do that with Spotify and Apple and all that. I guess you can because it's all on your phone, but there's still a lot of people out there that love the physical experience of it. I think that's one reason that vinyl has come back so hard, is people love to be able to, man, a big old vinyl record. That's a cool, and it looks cool in your house too. And so, but I am anxious to see what that's like. I look forward to just seeing the difference in all of the economics in general with it. I think that mechanically it all still works the same. Your load in and your sound checks and all that are still going to be the same. But I really want to see what people are into as far as connecting with the artist and how they prefer to do that.
Yeah. Do you anticipate interacting with fans or schmoozing with fans between or after shows as part of the whole thing, connecting and boosting merch sales and whatever it does for you?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's so much a part of it. For me, it has to be. You have to take that time. because, these people are ultimately what's keeping you alive and keeping you on the road. And so they're just as important as the music I'm making. Because I can make music all day long, but without the support, it doesn't really mean much. So yeah, you for sure have to spend that time. It's an investment, but it's well worth it. And there's great people out there. There's great people that. What's always fun to me is meeting people that are so excited about new music or a new artist or a new band. I love that. People that just get really ramped up about it. My girlfriend, man, she's quite an anomaly. She's terrible with remembering who sings what, and song titles. She's awful about those things, admittedly so. But it's crazy to me because she can hear a song from 20, 25 years ago that she probably hasn't heard in 10 years, and she remembers every word of it. And she just loves music. And there are so many different personality types out there when it comes to loving music. And I love meeting those different personalities.
Yeah, that is interesting. My wife is the same way with the whole, she can remember the lyrics of songs, but she may struggle to recall who did it. And, digitalization has made that even more difficult to do, because we don't have that physical part of, the name of the artist, the artwork, and also often buying an entire album based on one song, taking a gamble and buying an entire album. And now it's just so a la carte. It makes it tough to remember. I want to ask you about your forays, your adventures in recording. I was watching, I was trolling your Facebook this morning, and I saw that you did this video, maybe in the last week, a little studio trick where you ran some vocals through a Vox amp, which was very cool, by the way.
Yeah, I'm an really idiot, cool. Man. Don't ever do that.
Oh no, I thought it was great. I've only started recording in late 2020, and I'm predominantly a drummer, but I recorded some drum and vocal tracks for a couple of singles I released the following year, or published the following year, and since I actually got to start, my fascination in listening to stories of how different producers get sounds that they do is fascinating me. I'm kind of developing this catalog of tricks that I've learned about that I've yet to try. But I wanted to ask, what got you into recording? How long have you been doing it? And maybe, what's your favorite advice for people who ask about any facet of it?
Those are great questions, man. I got into recording because when I got my first publishing deal, I wanted to make, and again, that was 2010. So in 2010, we didn't have these great voice recorders on our phones, and everybody had to carry around like a little, digital like Zoom recorder to put your ideas down, or your work tapes, your new songs that you had just written. And I wanted to make better recordings. And so, and I had the Zoom recorder and all that, but I wanted to make better recordings. And so I got Pro Tools and, a mic and some headphones and interface and all the stuff that goes with it, and just started putting down rough work tapes, which, for anyone not familiar, a work tape is just a simple, usually a guitar vocal recording, just one or two guitars and a vocal, just cleanly recorded, or a piano and a vocal. And it's really, more than anything else, it's for memory, because when you're writing so many songs, it's really easy for me anyway, it's really easy for me to forget melodies and phrasing and things like that. And so, and also as a full-time songwriter, those songs have to be cataloged. through a publishing company. So they have those for their records. It goes in their catalog. So that was what got me into recording. But man, I really fell in love with it. And I became fascinated with, how do I make this sound better? How do I make this sound like the radio? And it kind of went from there. And yeah, I've been at it 12 years now, going on 13 this year. My advice, the second part of your question, my advice for anybody that's young to recording is to do things just like the vocal through the amp trick. Just don't, there's no rules. And that take from that video where I recorded the vocal through the amp back into Pro Tools, that is exactly, and at the end of that video, I'm sure you saw it, it was, I put a small clip there of that section in context with the track. And that was what you saw in the video was the actual take. And I love it. I love how it turned out. Now, not all of those experiments are going to turn out that way. You're not going to love all of them. But the point is to try it and to do anything within your power to get the sound that you're looking for. So there's just no rules. If it sounds great, it sounds great. That's the rule.
I love that. That's great. That's great. I didn't check out the context piece. I saw it. I now have to go check it out, but
yeah, it's at the very end of after you see me recording it back into Pro Tools, then I actually put the clip on there of it in the song.
Yeah, cool. And lest I forget to mention before we're done, or in the intro for this episode when it comes out, at drewsmithlive.com, everyone can find your socials and can find your Facebook page there and see that example of trickery.
Yeah, that's sorcery.
Yeah. How you doing on time?
I'm good, man. Listen, we can't go any further until I ask. So, your given name is Roberto. Mm-hmm. You go by Robonzo.
Yeah, and Robonzo's kind of just like an artist name and a nickname that a musician friend gave me. But
did it come from Bonzo?
Yeah. Actually, I
love that. I was hoping you would say that, man.
Yeah, I was playing in an original band in rehearsing in Redwood City, and just the guys were just a silly group of guys, and the guitar player, whenever things went sideways with something we were working on, he would always start playing the transition part of the Lemon Song, I believe it is, where you have that loud guitar, and so we would ensue playing it, and the room we just start cracking up. But the bass player in that started calling me Robonzo, so it just sort of stuck.
Dude, that's brilliant. That's a great story, and that's a great nickname too. One of my friends and co-producers on all this new stuff that I'm putting out, he and we were here mixing a few days ago, and I don't even know how it came up, man, but I said, dude, have you listened to any of the isolated tracks of Bonzo playing on those Zeppelin records? And he reminded me that I'd totally forgotten about this, but he reminded me that I had forced him to watch one here several months ago. Bonzo, just it's the drum parts just soloed out from the original tapes. Mm-hmm. It's incredible, man.
It really is.
John Bonham was just a brilliant drummer.
I'm reminded, I'm in this little Facebook chat from two of the guys from that quartet I mentioned, and I don't know, it was about a year ago or whatever, I heard I'm not sure if it was an isolated track or it was just really stripped down, but it was Good Times, Bad Times, and I was like, listen, you can hear his Speed King Ludwig pedal like kind of squeaking a little bit, and it's kind of interesting because it added the timing is so what it is. I was going to say precise. I'm not sure if that's the right word, but it's so what it is. It almost was like another bit of percussion that was layered down deep in the final recording. But yeah,
I love stuff like that, man.
Isn't that fun? That's really fun.
I love to hear the little clinks and clacks and squeaks, and man, that's what makes it real. That guy could bend time.
Oh, I know.
He was brilliant.
otherworldly, as a fellow drummer friend said once.
He
Totally
he really
otherworldly.
was. Yeah, there'll never be another. And if you haven't seen the video, it's worth checking out. We watched this one the other day as well, where Rick, God, how do you say his last name? Beato, I think.
Yeah.
Um, took he took one of those isolated drum parts of Bonzo's, and he he stuck it in Pro Tools, and then he copied it and he quantized it, and it's just unreal because the quantized version, which is what you would get today, it just sucked all the life out of the performance of it.
Oh yeah. Did it take out all the swing and?
Though swing was so gone, man. So gone. I mean, pocket was obviously there, but the swing was just gone.
I had never thought of. I'd never run that sort of thought experiment in my head, quantizing it, and I've never worked with quantizing stuff, so it's sort of it's a relatively new concept for me. I was listening to some Broken Record podcast interviews with John Frusciante that from the Chili Peppers. There was a series
Yeah.
which was really wonderful to listen to because it really gets into his songwriting, sort of creativity, why his style has done what it has. But anyway, it led me to a related one in a related series with Chad Smith. And when asked about drummers, Bonham was one of the first people he talked about. But he reminded me of something I was wondering, like, wow, have I sort of lost that in my drumming? And it was that, the likes of Bonham and Charlie Watts and Levon, and those drummers had such swing in what they did, which is what really made them so different.
Man, it really was. And like with Levon, an interesting thing about him that I think kind of happened when the band started recording was, they were so limited on tracks. It's not like now where you can run 96, you can record 96 different tracks at a time.
Yeah.
And those guys had like 8, and there was like, 6 or 7 people in the band. And so they were having to use, one microphone on 2 different instruments a lot of times. And Levon Helm, and I'm sure being a drummer, you've seen this, but when recording, he would share. They had a SM57 set up on his snare drum to catch the snare, and he would have to lean down when it was his, because all the guys in the band sang, and they all the one of the coolest things about the band is like they also had no rules, and they were like, well, I'll sing this verse if you sing the second verse, and then this guy will sing the chorus, and well, they just didn't care. And Levon, anytime that he sang when they were recording, he had to lean down and basically have his head right next to the snare drum so that he could sing into that mic that was on the snare. And as a result of that, it kind of changed the way that he was playing, because he had to get out of the way so he wouldn't hit himself in the face.
Oh, that's nuts.
And yeah, it's crazy, man. If you can, I highly recommend pulling that up on YouTube sometime, because it's fascinating to watch. But it made him even more unique as a drummer than what he already was.
Wow. I'm guilty of not really having dug into the band or Levon, and it came up in that conversation. And I think Chad Smith talked about having met him and how wonderful that was. But, I know that these guys are really important. So anyway, this was just in the last week I heard that. So and now we're talking about it. So anyway, my interest has been renewed, and I think even doubly so that we're sitting here talking about it.
Yeah. I'm not I was never like a Beatles maniac, but Ringo Starr, man, he had some swing. Well, I mean, he's still around, so he's still got it, I'm sure, but that dude's got some swing too.
Oh man, I heard Greg. You know Greg Bissonette, the drummer.
Yeah.
I heard an interview with him because he tours with Ringo a lot, and he was so complimentary of his swing and his style of playing. And this is from Mr. Virtuoso.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. You're right. I'm have a gig coming up on the 27th, and the band is covering Octopus's Garden, which is fun, but it's so difficult with the drumming and the harmonies, and like I said we should move that to like the encore list if we get but everyone has so much fun with it.
Dude, that's my favorite Beatles song.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah. Yeah. My partner has a 10-year-old daughter, so I'm kind of a pseudo stepdad to her, and she loves that song. And how could you not? It's such a cool song, man.
It's not.
I don't know what the hell it means, but it's a really cool song.
I always think of it as him. I mean, you probably remember when he did the voice and maybe more of the animation Thomas the Train, I think it was called. And,
Yeah.
I mean, since having come back and listened to Octopus's Garden so many times, and I'm still doing it, like just fascinated by the performance on it by everyone, but I just sort of look at it as his early expression of this things about being a child or children or his childhood, perhaps, that he just really loved to express and came out in his music, way back then, and maybe still does. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a cool song, man. I love to play that song.
It's a tough one as a band, trying to do that live. It's pretty funny. I guess, I was thinking we should have, I think anyone who covers that would be well served to just make it their own and not try to do too much what those guys did. So when are you going to release your next track?
Man, February 7th.
Oh, nice.
I've got 3 new ones coming out on February 7th.
3?
That I'm excited about. Yeah. They're going to drop 3 in a day. And they're not, they're not being collectively dropped. Like, it's not a 3-song EP or anything. I've got a full EP coming out March 21st that I'm excited about, and they'll include those 3 songs. But I've got 24 songs coming out this year, and
wow,
yeah, super excited about that. I think it's that seems aggressive, I know, but for a guy that's got 1,000 songs or so sitting around that hasn't put anything out in the amount of time that I've been doing this, I think I'm like, well, let's just dump everything at once. We'll just put them all out. And it's a different thing. Artists don't put out that much music, but per year.
Except for Taylor Swift, right?
Except for Tay-Tay. Man, she can come with it. She's great. But yeah, so February 7th, just right around the corner.
Yeah.
And then March 21st, even more music.
Wow, that's so cool. Are there ever, or will there ever be, like, conflicts for, whether it's just like a conflict in your head or anything about publishing, where you're pulling from your own catalog, or is there like a separate catalog of stuff that's never even gone to the publishing companies?
Well, no, there's definitely none of those catalogs that exist, as far as I've not held anything back, and mostly for legal reasons. You're supposed to turn in everything that you write because, rightfully they own it. But you know what, man? I've not asked permission for anything. I'm just doing it, and I really feel like I've put in my time. And the thing about it is that I'm not selling 1 million records right now. So if I put something out tomorrow and Garth Brooks wants to record it, it's not going to affect his album sales because I've already put it out. It's not. We're on 2 very different scales. If anything, it'll do me good because he'll put it out, and then people will search for it, and then they'll be able to hear my version. And it's also it's a simple fix, and this has happened before where writers have put out their demos and things like that, and somebody will record it. It's an easy fix. if the label wants you to take your version down for whatever reason, if you have lucked into getting, 100,000 streams or something, it's real easy to just pull it down so that it's not, conflicting with what the major label artist is doing. So if that were the case, I would certainly consider pulling it down. If that was going to be a deal breaker for the artist, then yeah.
Oh, that's so interesting. Now I'm suddenly thinking, is that why I see songs disappear? One of the reasons I'll see songs disappear from the digital space, or maybe
it happens
in another album.
And typically, these labels are really good about once a little bit of time passes, and I'm not talking 10 years or anything. I'm talking about, after the heat of that artist releasing the song. You get a year or so after that, they're usually cool about letting you put it back up.
Good to know. Good to know for, and hopefully for people listening to this. Well, there's a lot of stuff we could talk about. Maybe that warrants us getting back together someday for a part 2.
I'd love that. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm excited for you with all this new stuff coming out. I look forward to hearing it, and good luck on the things ahead. I did have one more thing I wanted to ask you, because I think it's interesting to a lot of other artists. But are you still doing, or will you have time? Do you have plans to continue doing any of the courses like those that you've done on recording?
Yeah, I've wanted to redo that course for a while. So what happened with the Before You Record course was I was getting ready to start filming that. I was going to do it in the studio and make it look real nice and shiny and pretty and all of that. And then COVID happened. And so I sat there for, I don't know, maybe a month or so. And I was like, you know what? I'll do it here at home. It's the same content. You're getting the same information. The difference is I'm just going to be sitting on my couch. It's not going to look as cool. So the aesthetic is not, it's not as cool as me sitting in the studio, talking about it. But it's the exact same content. It's the exact same information. And so I don't know. I'm still torn about whether I want to go back and redo that or not, because the audio is fine. The video is fine. The graphics are, pretty much everything else turned out the way that it was going to work out, in the first place. So if I have anything to add to that course, I might go back, but really every bit of information that you need is there. That was another thing that was important to me about that course, was like to really put it all out. Like don't leave anything out. No gimmicks at the end. You don't get 60% of the information that you need, and at the end of the course, I show up on a new video going, now that's most of everything you need to know before you go into the studio. But for $39.99, you can get the rest of the information that you need.
Yeah.
So none of that. It's all out there. If I think of something interesting to do in the future, I'm certainly open to considering doing another course. But really, that was a big one for me, and I'm proud of that work. I'm happy that I've got it out there.
Cool, and it's on your website for people who are now interested in seeing what it's all about.
Yeah. There's a link there to the Before You Record course, and you can also go and learn more about what I do in the studio on there through the Gray Sound recording services, and that website is up. So you can check all that out. DrewSmithLive.com. All the links are there.
Cool. Well, great. Best of luck. And for what it's worth, I was going to tell you, like, you mentioned the recording or doing the video or sitting on your sofa for any any new one that may come out, or that you had that thought going through your mind. And I was just I was thinking, some of my favorite YouTube tutorials are guys sitting, in a chair. They don't, you can't even see what they look like. You just see a guitar.
Yeah.
But
that's true, man. That's a good point. I appreciate you saying that, because it's, like I said, the information was really the most important thing to me. the aesthetics of it were just an additional bonus. But it's still, I still think about it. I'm still like, man, I really wish we could have done that in my studio. But yeah, the information's there. I guess that's what counts. But now you've got me thinking about it again. I don't know.
I'm going to have to send you this guitar player that has done so many tutorials, and it's kind of funny. It's just, you literally just, you have no idea what he looks like, and but they're pretty fun. It's good for inspiration and for comedic value, I'm sure.
Isn't that nuts, man? That somebody can be, now with the age that we're in, with all the YouTube tutorials and stuff, somebody can be famous and you don't even know what they look like.
Yeah, it's funny. Well, Drew, thanks, man. I really appreciate it. My new platform says it's strange. It says it's going to hit its intended duration in 2 minutes. I don't know if that was my doing or what, but it looks like we're coming under the wire. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I look forward to hearing your new music, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Rabanzo, thank you so much, man. I'm very grateful for your time this morning, and I can't wait to do it again, man. Reach out anytime.
All right, thanks, man. If you do not yet have a website for your music, check out Bandzoogle. It was created to help musicians and bands build their website and manage direct-to-fan marketing and sales. Bandzoogle features amazing design options, a commission-free store to sell merch, music, tickets, and you get detailed fan data. And there's more. Try it free at bandzoogle.com. Use the promo code ROBONZO, that's ROBONZO, to get 15% off your first year. You've been listening to The Unstarving Musician with Robonzo. That's me. Please follow us on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can find links and mentions for this episode at unstarvingmusician.com. Thanks again for listening. Peace, gratitude, and a whole lot of love.